You're listening to In My Humble Opinion with Maxilia Robinson and Charles Lewis. Only on 101.3 Jams.
IMHO Talk Show. You have Sir Charles. You have Razor, Miss Max, AA Ron. Still here. I wanted to finish up our education talk with the doctor, the good doctor from the Jefferson School African American Heritage Center. None other than Dr. Andrea Douglas. Good to have you. Good afternoon, Dr. Douglas.
Good afternoon. Thanks for having me. I'm glad I can see all of you too, as a matter of fact. This is actually quite nice. Hey.
Yeah, we used to having you in person, but great partner. Appreciate the work you guys are doing. Mm-hmm. And so that's why we wanted to bring you in because, wanted you to elaborate on the current happenings there at the Jefferson Center, right? And I know in particular, your Liberation and Freedom Days, 2021, that's going on right now. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, quick on the background. So Liberation and Freedom Day was created through a sort of proclamation by council. And what it does is recognize March 3rd, 1865, which is the day that the Union troops marched into Charlottesville and then emancipated the city. And at that point, 52.2% of the population were enslaved. And so that number of people, although largely self-emancipated in 1863 in relationship to the Emancipation Proclamation, the federal enforcement of the end of enslavement occurred in Charlottesville on March 3rd, 1865, which is about a month or so ahead of the complete end of the Civil War. So as a consequence of Blue Ribbon recommendations, one of them was to recognize this. We had our first Liberation and Freedom Day celebration at the Heritage Center with one set of lectures, right? We are now in our, I can't even remember, is it the 5th year or the 6th year? But we've grown from 1 day to 7 days.
How about that?
We've grown from one event to a citywide event with 15 organizations participating and 13 different events happening. So, and also including last year was the first time they really participated, but both Albemarle and Charlottesville City Schools are involved in this.
Nice.
So we've done, I think very quickly, worked to incorporate the city and the county into this celebration, because talking about 52% is not talking about Charlottesville itself. It's talking about all of the plantations in Albemarle County and those that existed in the city as well. So we want to be as complete in our discussion of that, largely because we also need to be thinking about how we even think about the origins of an African American population in Charlottesville, and that is a city-county relationship. So we want to be as inclusive as we can in that. So, in about an hour, at 2:30, the first event will begin, which is a visual at the slave auction block. On Wednesday, we'll have a keynote with Christy Coleman, and if you know who Dr. Coleman is, she is someone who is considered to be one of the New York Times rated her as one of the most important people to know in America. And so she's going to do our keynote on Wednesday. Just to also give you another sense, on Saturday at about 12 o'clock, we have the Virginia State University's Trojan Explosion drumline.
They're going to have Virginia State again, Max.
My daughter's Trojan.
Hey, look. Hey, Aaron and Giles, apparently Max and Troy giving VSU a lot of money because they're doing a lot all of a sudden. They're doing a lot all of a sudden.
Well, you guys got to hook up that Queens connection. Elliot's wife Renee is from there too. Maybe there's some pipeline with him here.
It's a process.
So, that, and then, we end the whole thing with some film, with a film by Eduardo Montes Bradley, which is about President Monroe's other family. So a really wide range and broad selection of things going on.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, so how else are we giving forward there at the Jefferson School? Like, so that's an event starting today, and some of the other upcoming things on your agenda on how you're going to continue to enrich. We're still in COVID season, but but I know your work never stopped. Educating the people. So give us some insight on what else tops your agenda.
Well, I want to plug one more thing because it's really important to me.
Yeah.
And this is this run walk that we're doing, and talking about educating the people. This thing is a 9-mile course up and down some hills, but what it really does is take you by all of the African American monuments and important sites in the city. Right? Mm-hmm. We spend a lot of time talking about Confederate monuments, right, and not enough time talking about some other things in my mind. As everybody knows, I'm a proponent for rethinking those monuments in our community completely. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, we also have to realize that there are sites like the Kitty Foster site that's over at the university that represents a free Black family. One of the places on the site is Pilgrim Baptist Church, which is important because Reverend Johnson helped to desegregate Albemarle County schools. He was really active in desegregating all of our public spaces. And so we're causing people to go through 2 sites that are important for the history of Black people in this community. Mm-hmm. We're raising money for 6 organizations, all organizations led by Black people, and serving not just the African American community, but serving a larger community, generally speaking. So that's one thing. Go to our website, sign up, check it out. You can be a fundraiser, you can just walk the walk. We're really trying to raise money to support these organizations.
Yes.
The other thing that is really important to me, I've got a lovely, gorgeous exhibition at the Heritage Center right now called Charlottesville Collects African American Art from the 20th and 21st Century.
Nice.
It's up until May. We are open to the public. All you need to do is go to our website and make a reservation so you come through. But when I tell you this show is spectacular, I'm not saying anything about the work that I do. I'm saying about the capacity for art to inspire and the capacity for art to transcend even COVID-19. All right. Mm-hmm. And so we've made this possible. The artists in the show are both local artists and really well-known national artists. So Gordon Parks is sitting next to a Frank Walker. We've also got Robert Reed. Yeah. Robert Reed graduated from the Burley High School. He goes on to study at Yale. He is one of the first African-American professors at the School of the Art in Yale. If you're a painter if you're someone who studied painting past 1975, you studied with him. And so, someone like that next to a Sam Gilliam. Sam Gilliam is the last remaining artist of the Washington Color School, next to a Carrie Mae Weems, who just got a major retrospective at the MoMA. Frank Walker is next to Bo Walker, his brother, whose work you rarely see. So I can keep going on and on and on about this show.
That's enriching.
But the point of it is to think about 70 years of art making. The earliest work in the show is the Gordon Parks from 1956. The last work is a 2011 photograph by Hank Willis Thomas. Those 2 works encompass 70 years of art making. And the show wants to suggest that looking at these works these artists are engaged in as historic agents. They're describing our contemporary moment within the context of themselves, within the context of their relationships to the history of Western art, and also to the context of the relationship of African American social currency, if you will, because currency is an interesting word. So
Yeah.
So
Thank you.
you know, as I say, the show is up till May, and I wanted it to have a long run because I wanted people to have an opportunity to see it. So yeah, that's what we're up to.
First of all, I'm gonna say it. Queens get the money. Thank you. All right. Just gotta remind them real quick. But I would be remiss to have someone that does so much research, so much awesome work in the community if I didn't ask you specifically about the reparations conversation. Recently, there have been some comments made by former President Obama stating that that it's not tangible for reparations to be given out, specifically because of some of the quote unquote white resentment. And that comment to me, and I wanted to get your feedback on it. It was I don't want to say it was condescending, but I did find it interesting because, you know, Dr. King, Medgar Evers, all the people actually that you mentioned, all the artists were attempting to do something that were not, it wasn't logical at the time. They were trying to do something that hasn't been done. So even for him to say, well, this is not logical, it's almost like an oxymoron. I'm all 100% for reparations simply because of the fact that if the federal government was involved in harming black people, they should also be involved in helping them. That's just my personal opinion. What is your theory about the whole reparations movement? Not specifically if we should, but how tangible is it? And is this something that we can get past and soon and be something that we can get to actually get on the floor?
I think that in some ways that there are multiple ways that one can think about what reparations means.
Right.
And so that reparations isn't just simply about paying for the contemporary cost of enslavement. There are multiple ways of thinking about this. And I think that as we begin to think about what it is that is most possible and most immediate, and thinking about what is most needed in our contemporary time, that's what the conversation should be about, right? When you are living in a city like Charlottesville, where the economic gap is so big, where the public health gaps are so big, where the education gaps are so wide, and then you begin to ask yourself, what are the root causes of those things? You point directly back to enslavement, and you also point back to the long history of racial terror, as how you want to describe it. But Jim Crow, in my mind, is racial terror writ large.
That's a great description.
So, what I'm most interested in is the closing of those gaps, right? And what it takes to arrive at that point. That's the conversation that is important to me. And also at the same time, the general description of how one values people is important to me. The need to change those relationships such that we move away from this sort of charity model as if, as if someone's doing something for us, as opposed to the notion that you did something which limited our capacity to be more than we are.
You might want to say that one more time.
You're kind of getting what you owe.
No, I said you might want to say that one more time because that's not necessarily. And words are important, but we're not charity. We've been limited on how we can actually perform, and it's just remarkable. Like even some of the artists that you're describing, the fact that we were even able to do the art under those circumstances is even more impressive. But I don't mean to cut you off. Continue.
No. So I mean, I just think that there needs to be, most of the work that I do, and and hopefully the way that we're attempting to do it at the Heritage Center is really sort of to shift the conversation such that the conversation is much more reflective of the truth, right? So, for instance, I'll give you a good for instance in this, and I'm sorry my answers are always so long.
That's all right. They're good.
Okay. So this is Black People Month, and I say it not in some ways disparagingly because all of a sudden there's this huge concentration and thought about this. And so I've been asked to do, presentations. And very often people are saying to me, can you do a presentation about Vinegar Hill? And at this point, I'm saying, no, I don't want to. Because there's not much I can do about Vinegar Hill. Vinegar Hill is long gone. But there is a lot that I can do, for instance, to point to those things in our community that are created by Black people that still remain, that are still just as much in jeopardy as anything else, right? So on the one hand, asking me to talk about Vinegar Hill means that you want me to tell you about a tragedy. My refusal to do that says, I'm not talking to you about a tragedy. I want to talk to you about those things that remain, that really are reflective of the value of Vinegar Hill.
Right.
That really sort of want to describe the African community, not as this singular site, but a much bigger space in our city, a much longer historical range in our city. That when I start talking about free Black people who own property on the downtown mall, you need to see the downtown mall as a much broader space than what you think of it as right now. So that when you tell a Black man he doesn't have the right to be on the mall, the Black man can turn around and look at you and say, see that Wells Fargo building over there?
Say so.
I need you to know that was first owned by Black people. Right?
That's right, perspective.
See that landmark hotel site over there? I need you to know that those people still have ancestry in this community.
That's right.
We're not charity. We have just been limited in our space by the nature of racist practice in this community. And so when you want to talk to me about reparations or anything like that, I need it also to include a complete social shift in how we understand the value of bodies that move around in our spaces together.
That's right. Thank you for that. And
Right? So,
I'm sorry, I was going to kick it over to Max. I know she wanted to chime in and she can close how she wants.
Yeah, so I wanted to ask you, Andrea, how do we, like the supporters of yourself and the Jefferson School, work to make sure like the opportunities that you guys offer, that you discussed earlier in the segment, not only affect kind of a microcosm of the area, the Black people that are in the struggle and want to learn more about the struggle, maybe the white empathizers, but not just a microcosm of the area, but rather helps to create a new mindset for the area entirely?
Well, I think that the answer to your question is a little bit about what I was talking about just now. I think that the more we understand what the history of this place is, I mean, if you go to, for instance, to Court Square, for instance, right, and you walk around Court Square and you start to look at the things that are there. If you had just sort of beamed in from somewhere else, you would think that Charlottesville was only about, Jack Jewett, the three presidents, and Lewis and Clark, and the sort of march along the great white exceptionalist history. And we know that it's much, much more than that.
That's right.
And so when you think about how you describe this space, even to a tourist market, I mean, how do you market yourselves to a broader world? How do you stand in your community and describe yourself as moving towards equity when you maintain a conversation to the larger world about that narrative and not the other narrative, right? how do you create expectations for people who come to Charlottesville if you don't, in fact, speak to those things that are true and real about Charlottesville? I'm not saying that you should be articulating a narrative about, the big disparities. I'm saying that if you're going to tell a history of Charlottesville, tell the truth.
Tell it.
Right?
Tell it
it's
all.
not just about white exceptionalism. Tell the truth. There are things in your community that point to the fact that your narrative is not a true narrative.
And is the truth enough to change a mindset?
It's the beginning of it. It's the beginning of it. It is a collective ownership of that truth. Is that what we're after? But if we think that we have been in a truth-telling process for the last 70 years, we know we have not. Right? We haven't been in a truth-telling process in Charlottesville in the last 10 years in reality. So at some point you have to say, at what point did we all begin to start to tell the truth to each other about who we really are? And I'm not talking about at the social level. I'm just talking about how we describe. When the Heritage Center first opened, I'll give you an instance. Tourism created a campaign, and they sent the campaign back because the only thing that they included about Black people in this campaign were football players, right? Sports stars. And so that's in 2013. They did it again like another couple years ago. Remember that, right? Tourism did another weird thing. But in 2013, the Heritage Center had a concert and they had to come and film that concert because that was the only space that they could come to or understand to find something Black. And the company that did the campaign said, we didn't include it because there was nothing to include. Right? So,
wow.
Well, that's truth and that's a fact, right? And we can still point to the fact that this is how this is being done. Now, what's happening now in tourism is a completely different conversation. But that's a conversation that happened as a consequence of some work. That happened as a consequence of reorganizing the CACVB and giving space and voice to people. So I don't think that we can start saying that we are even, if you want to even use 2017 as the mark, we want to say before and after. We've been engaged in this now 3 and a couple of months. That does not make, we've come a long way. From the time I walked into Charlottesville and walked down Rugby Road and watched and saw the Confederate flags in the windows of the fraternities. I'm not seeing those things anymore, but
right.
Truth is an important thing, and the collective truth and all of us being willing to include Black people in that collective truth is an important thing. And I think that's hopefully answers your question.
Thank you, Dr. Douglas. Thank you. As always, Ms. Max, you want to take us to break? Jefferson School African American Heritage Center. So much to offer.
Yeah, thank you for joining us. We appreciate you, Dr. Douglas.
I appreciate being asked.
Have a great event today.
Okay.
All right.
Thanks, you guys.
All right, family, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, conversations with none other, and Charles, I'm going to try to get it right, Mayor Nakia J. Walker.
Hey.
J.
All right.
We'll be right back. Stay with us.